Okay, so get this. We're diving into this case study today. It's about this program in Australia. They tried to like totally change how they do physical education for kids. And the way they did it was by bringing the whole community together. It's schools and universities,
Mm.
even people from other countries all working together. I'm already like so intrigued.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It kind of speaks to this like global trend where we're trying to tackle these huge problems by like bringing people together and teaming up. And this case study like lays out how they did it, like what worked and what didn't work. And it's all in this book chapter called Conclusion and Recommendations from this book, The Future of Health, Wellbeing and Physical Education.
Okay, so the program that they're talking about in this chapter is called Best Start. And it took place in Gippsland, Victoria, in Australia. So before we get into like all the details, can you tell us like what exactly were they trying to achieve with this program?
Yeah, so their goal was to create what they called quality physical education, or QPE for short. And they wanted to give these primary school kids amazing experiences in PE, things like swimming lessons, sports sessions, tennis coaching. And here's the thing that I think is really interesting. It was all free for the schools and families.
Wait a minute, free. How is that even possible? I'm imagining like some crazy fundraising or
Yeah.
like a super generous person just gave them a ton of money.
Not quite. It was all thanks to how they set up these partnerships. It was a really unique structure. We're talking about Australian universities and schools, registered training organizations, people from the local health industry, education departments, even like national sports governing bodies. Oh, and get this, an international teacher training course from the UK.
Whoa,
Oh,
okay,
what?
that is a lot of people. Can you imagine trying to organize all those different groups? How did they get everyone to agree and like work together?
Yeah, so they use this framework. It's called the 9 building blocks for successful partnerships. And it's based on like a ton of research. And it basically helps you analyze like all the good things and the bad things that can happen when people try to collaborate.
Okay, I see. I see. So we've got this big team and they've got a shared goal. They want to create these really high quality PE experiences. But where do they actually do all this stuff? I mean, schools are already pretty busy places, right?
Right, and that's where it gets really interesting. They used what they called a third space. It was this leisure center, and it was located right between the university and the school. So it was like this neutral space where they could all meet up and work together.
Oh, I love that. It's like a symbol of their collaboration.
Yeah.
But did it actually work? Did Best Start actually do what they set out to do?
Yeah, so the data they collected shows that it was pretty successful. For example, there was this big increase in the number of students who enrolled in PE majors at Monash University in Gippsland. And get this, they had a 100% attendance rate for the Prep 1 and 2 students at Churchill Primary School. For the swimming lessons, 100%.
Wow, that's amazing. I've never heard of 100% attendance for anything. There must have been something really special about this program.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the numbers. The feedback that they got from everyone was really positive. The kids, the teachers, even the parents, they all loved the program.
That's amazing. Do we have any like specific examples of the feedback they got? Like what were people actually saying?
Yeah, so there's this really powerful quote in the chapter from the team leader at Churchill Primary School. She talks about how grateful the families were for the free swimming lessons, especially the families who couldn't afford to send their kids to other swimming programs.
That's so great. It must have been so rewarding for everyone involved, knowing they were making a real difference in these kids' lives. And they were removing those financial barriers that often stop kids from doing things like this. It sounds like it was a huge win for the community. But did it benefit the teachers who were involved too?
Definitely. One of the big impacts was on pre-service teacher training.
Yeah.
The program gave these aspiring teachers really valuable hands-on experience, and they got professional development, all while they were still studying.
That's awesome. So the kids are getting quality PE
Mm-hmm.
and the future teachers are getting real world experience.
Yeah.
But here's my question. Was it all perfect? Or were there some challenges and obstacles along the way?
Unfortunately, yeah. Even with the best intentions and a great plan, Best Start had some setbacks. The biggest problem, and actually the reason the program ended after 4 years, was a lack of funding.
Oh man, that's such a common problem. So many great ideas die because they don't have enough money.
Hmm.
Were there any other challenges? I mean, managing that many partners must have been a nightmare sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They had a lot of communication problems, especially when they had to rely on a third party, like the swimming supervisor, for example, to manage all the communication between the pre-service teachers and the schools.
Yeah, that makes sense. Adding another layer of communication like that could definitely cause confusion and delays. So we've got funding issues and communication breakdowns. Anything else?
Yeah, they also had some disagreements. about like the direction of the program. Some of the partners were more focused on the business side of things, and that clashed with the program's social justice goals. Like, for example, there were
Yeah.
some pretty big arguments. They were trying to choose a registered training organization to do those swimming and water safety
Oh,
qualifications.
well, so basically a clash of values. That must be hard to deal with.
Mm.
We have so many different people involved who all have their own priorities. What about using that third space? Did that
Right.
cause any problem?
Actually, yeah. You wouldn't believe how much bureaucracy they had to deal with just to use the leisure center. Apparently, the program leader needed a specific qualification, like a certificate 4V, just to get started. And then they had all these problems with scheduling because the university teacher training units involved were only offered every other year.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. It's amazing how those little bureaucratic details can have such a huge impact on a project. I guess it just goes to show you that partnerships aren't always easy, even when everyone has good intentions.
Exactly. And it shows how important it is to look at those policies and procedures that we often overlook within university schools and leisure centers to see if there are any potential problems for collaboration.
Yeah, it's like you need another partnership just to deal with all the bureaucracy.
Mhm.
So Best Start had a lot of successes, but it also had some big challenges. But what can we learn from all of this? Both the good and the bad.
That's what we'll talk about when we come back for part 2. We'll dive into the research and the data and the lasting impact of Best Start. Stay tuned.
So before the break, we were talking all about Best Start, this amazing program in Australia. They use these community partnerships to totally like change PE for kids. We talked about their 100% attendance for those swimming lessons and the impact it had on the kids and the future teachers. But we also uncovered some major challenges, like not having enough money communication breakdowns, even in times when the partners just didn't agree.
Yeah, and Best Start wasn't just like a one-off thing, you know? It represents this global push to solve big problems by bringing people together. Even the UN is promoting partnerships as like a main way to reach their sustainable development goals.
Like the whole world is realizing how powerful it can be to collaborate. But like we saw, even the best partnerships can be hard to keep going. So what did the research say about overcoming those obstacles? How do you actually get all those different groups working together?
Well, the study really stressed finding and fixing those systemic barriers. You know, the ones that can get in the way of people working together? Like, remember that crazy rule where the program leader had to have a certificate 4 just to start? Those kinds of bureaucratic hoops can kill a project before it even begins.
It's unbelievable how much red tape there is,
Mm.
even for something as good as this. I'm starting to see why Best Start ran into so many problems.
And it wasn't just the certificate 4. Remember, the university teacher training units were only offered every other year. That kind of messed up schedule made it super tough to keep things moving and build strong relationships with the schools.
It's like they were always trying to catch up. I never thought about how a university course schedule could affect something like this.
Right, and that's why the research suggests we need to really examine the policies and procedures in universities, schools, leisure centers, even government places, so we can identify and address those roadblocks to collaboration.
It seems like if you want partnerships to really work, you need to look at the big picture. It's not just about getting everyone in the same room. You need to create a whole culture of collaboration that goes through every level of the organizations involved.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about how Best Start actually worked. How do they measure success besides attendance and those great testimonials?
Yeah. How do they know if they're actually making a difference?
They used a bunch of different ways to collect data, but one tool that stood out was the SECTU. That's short for Student Evaluation of Teaching in Units.
I'm not familiar with that one. What is set to and how does it work?
Basically, it's a feedback system made for education programs. It collects opinions on the teaching and learning, and then uses that info to improve things and guide how staff develop.
So it's like a feedback loop to make sure they were always getting better.
Exactly. It makes everyone accountable and encourages ongoing improvement. And the data from Set2, along with everything else they collected, showed really positive results.
We mentioned before how more students were enrolling in those PE majors at Monash University. Was there any other data that was particularly interesting?
The growth of some specific parts of the program was pretty amazing. Like the swimming unit went from 39 students in 2011 to almost 70 in 2013.
Whoa, that's almost double.
Yeah.
What do you think caused that huge increase?
The program was really good at giving those future teachers high-quality practical experience, which made the program super attractive. And you know, these students weren't all like star athletes. Many of them joined because they really wanted to be the best teachers they could be.
That's inspiring. They saw how valuable physical education is and how important it is to help kids develop a love of moving and being healthy, no matter how good they are at sport.
Right, and the research shows that the program actually changed people's ideas about PE. It wasn't just about being athletic, it was about confidence, teamwork, and making sure all kids had good experiences.
That goes back to what we discussed earlier about everyone needing to have the same values and goals. It sounds like everyone involved with Best Start, from the professors to the teachers to the swim instructors, were all dedicated to providing quality PE.
Absolutely. That shared understanding was super important for the program to succeed. It's amazing what can happen when everyone gets why what they're doing matters. That shared vision brings people together and helps them make a real difference.
It's a great example of how having a common goal can unite people and lead to real change. It also proves that even small projects like Best Start can have an impact that reaches far beyond the people directly involved.
Think about it. Those future teachers who got all that experience through the program, they became qualified educators, and now they're probably influencing tons of kids throughout their careers. Best Start's influence just keeps growing.
That's incredible. It's like a seed that keeps growing and spreading its benefits. We've heard a lot from the teachers and administrators, but I'm curious what the kids thought about the program.
You're right. It's important to hear their perspective, too. Thankfully, the researchers got feedback directly from the students, which gives us a glimpse into what it was like for them.
Tell me everything. What did the kids say about Best Start?
They were really positive. They loved the activities. They felt supported by the instructors. And they were excited about learning new skills and feeling more confident.
That's wonderful.
Mm.
But do we have any specific examples, like stories that really show what it was like for them?
The chapter highlights how impactful the swimming lessons were for a lot of the kids. Remember, a lot of these families didn't have a lot of money, and swimming lessons were often too expensive.
Right. The team leader from Churchill Primary School mentioned a family who couldn't afford to send all three of their kids to lessons. But Best Start made it possible for all three kids to participate.
Exactly. And the kids were so happy. They loved going to the lessons and they got to know the instructors. And they were so proud of learning how to swim.
It's amazing how something like a swimming lesson can have such a big impact. It wasn't just about learning a skill. It was about confidence, fun, and feeling like you belong.
You got it. And the research shows that those positive experiences can have a long-lasting effect. It shapes how those kids feel about being active and their overall well-being.
It's the kind of impact that goes way beyond the classroom. It's about creating a foundation for a healthy and active life.
For sure. The program helped instill a love of movement, and that's something they can carry with them forever. So we've talked about the successes, the challenges, the data, and the impact that Best Start had.
And we've connected this case study to bigger global trends, like how the UN sees partnerships as essential for sustainable development.
Most importantly, we've heard from the people who benefited the most, the kids themselves. Their enthusiasm and confidence make this story so inspiring.
Before we wrap up this part, I have a question for you, our listeners.
Mm.
What part of the Best Start story really stood out to you?
Did anything make you think about how partnerships could create change in your own community? Because that's what we'll be talking about next. We're going from a small town in Australia to your own backyard.
All right, so we're back. And before the break, we asked you what part of the Best Start story really stuck with you.
Yeah, did any of it make you think about how partnerships could, create change where you live? Because that's what we want to talk about now, taking those ideas from that small town in Australia and bringing them to your community.
You know, it's easy to hear a story like that and be like, well, that's great for them, but my community is totally different. We have our own problems.
Right, but the thing is, the basic ideas behind Best Start, they can apply anywhere. It wasn't just about PE. It was about understanding that we can do so much more when we work together, when we share what we have and use each other's strengths.
It's about moving from me to we. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by all the problems, we start asking, who can I work with to make things better?
Think about the challenges your community is facing. Maybe it's affordable housing or helping senior citizens. Maybe it's improving mental health services. Or even just creating more green spaces.
Yeah, these are really complicated issues, and it often feels like they're too big for one person or organization to solve.
But imagine if we used what we learned from Best Start. What if we started building connections and creating a support system that helps everyone?
Remember, Best Start did all this amazing stuff. Even though they didn't have a lot of money, they had to be creative and use what they had in the community. And they really showed the power of working together.
And that's a really important lesson for all of us. We might not have endless amounts of money, But we do have amazing people and organizations, and there are resources in our communities that we haven't even tapped into yet.
Okay, so let's get practical. What can our listeners do to find those partnership opportunities? How do we go from feeling inspired to actually doing something?
Start by thinking about an issue you really care about, something that bothers you, something you want to change. Then ask yourself, who else in my community might feel the same way? Who has the knowledge, the resources, the connections that could help?
Could be local businesses, community groups, schools, churches, even just your neighbors. People who are ready to get involved and make a difference.
Reach out to them, start conversations, be open to new possibilities. Remember, the best partnerships are built on respect, trust, and that shared commitment to a common goal.
And Best Start is a good example of that.
Yeah.
They had their fair share of problems, but they found ways to work through them and adapt. And they never lost sight of what they were trying to do.
Right, and that's something we should all keep in mind. Building and maintaining partnerships takes effort. You got to be flexible and willing to learn as you go.
But as we've seen, it's totally worth it. The rewards can be huge, not just for the people involved, but for the whole community.
You know, this program story really shows how even the best ideas need support to survive. It makes you think about what we value as a community when it comes to things like education and well-being.
That's a really good point. And it's something we should all be thinking about. So if you're feeling inspired after this deep dive, if you want to explore the power of partnerships, then take that next step. Get involved in your community and see what you can find.
And remember, even small actions can make a difference. Don't underestimate what you can do and the incredible power of collaboration to make the world a better place.
That's a perfect way to end our deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.